Thank you for joining the Detroit Buy, Hold, Invest podcast, broadcasting live from Shinebox Studio in blustery and snowy Detroit, Michigan. I'm your host, David Rabior with Detroit Buy, Hold, Invest, Clyde Realty, Detroit's top 1% echelon realtors and investment agents extraordinaire. So I could spend my time patting myself on the back, but I guess you're all here for today's episode, which I'm going to title How to Make Money, right? So everybody is reading, they're reading books, they're on YouTube, they're on, social media, they're on Discords, and, there's people that are regular old, clock punching Joe who doesn't have any ambition or aspire to do anything more than just be the company man. And then there's the rest of people who are like, hey, this is something I need to do. I need to go out. I need to figure out how to kill my own meat, drag it home, and make my own dinner. I'm sick of letting my boss determine how much I make and what I do and how I do it and where I got to be and when I can go home and when I got to come in and when I could take a vacation, and I could go on and on. And I know all of you people think about this. It frustrates you because why would it not? Nobody wants to be a slave to their job. Nobody wants to be a slave to their life. People want to have fun, spend time with their family, enjoy themselves. And when they get old and gray and they're sitting there, they're not sitting there thinking about, all the things that they should have done that didn't, all the good times they could have had, but they never did, and all that stuff. Nobody wants to do that, right? And then your family doesn't want to deal with you when you're an old bagel and you're sitting there complaining about how your life sucks and how you never did this and that, and you're taking it out on everybody. And we're not going to do that because we're all positive people and we're all trying to do things that are better than the average person. And if you do more than the average person, you'll have a better than average life. And everybody wants a better than average life. And some people aspire for more. Some people just want to be comfortable and be left alone. And I'm one of those people. I want to be comfortable. I want to make a lot of money, and I want to be left alone so that I can enjoy it with my family and my friends and do the things I love. And that's where we're at. So this show is the 20th episode titled How to Make Money. And today we're going to talk about a few different things. The first thing I want to start with is BRRRRing. A lot of people, they want to enter into the real estate game and they want to use financing and they want to cash out refinance on their house or something. And they get $100,000 or they get $200,000 and they want to go and use that to put 20% down and utilize loans like DSCR financing. And some of them want to use conventional financing. The problem with conventional financing is you got Fannie Mae and Freddie requirements that only allow you as a human being to get 10 loans in your name before you max out and you can't get any more. So enters in these programs called DSCR financing, which is debt service coverage ratio financing, which basically allows somebody to get a soft credit pull, and they utilize basically the value of the house with how much the tenant is paying in rent, and that kind of qualifies you to get a loan. And when you do that, it's a 20% down loan. That's a little predatory. The fees are a little bit higher than you would pay on a conventional loan through your bank or credit union or through a mortgage broker. And on top of that, they're going to be like a point to a point and a half higher than market interest rates. So this last week, I saw interest rates on DSCR at like 8 3/4, and it's not stopping people. They're buying these houses with these high interest rate loans because they think that they're good and they think that they're going to help them, and they're going to build a portfolio. The problem is if you have $100,000 and you're going to put $20,000 down on each house, let's say, after you put $20,000 down times 5, like you're broke and you have no more money. And then you're going to have houses that you paid a little bit more for because you're trying to utilize financing and get a tenant already in there, and you run the risk of buying somebody else's problem. And if you buy somebody else's problem, you could get stuck with a tenant that pays late or doesn't pay at all, or they're pissed off and they don't want to pay on time, or you're always chasing them for the rent or whatever. It's like all these bad things can go on when you buy somebody else's house. You don't know who that is or how they got vetted. And a lot of times in a scenario where you buy a rental property that comes with a tenant, whether it be Section 8 or cash paying, you're going to get the lease, you're going to get the rent roll, the ledger, you're going to get maybe proof that it's rental certified, which we're going to talk about on another episode, but you have to have rental certification in pretty much any municipality throughout Detroit or the suburbs. You just got to do it. Let me take a drink of my beer here. Hold on a second. So yeah, people want to utilize this financing and they don't understand the true cost of what that financing really is, and if you're pulling a loan at like 8.5% or something, or 8 3/4, like that interest payment, even on a 30-year loan with 20% down, you're paying a lot extra for that interest, and all that interest is front loaded in a 30-year mortgage, like in the first 15 years, you pretty much pay all interest. And nobody wants to take a 15-year loan because they want to keep the payment down. And they don't think about things like the taxes. And we're going to go over this. So when you're buying a house as a finance buyer, you have your principal and interest payment through your mortgage company, which could be, as high as 8 3/4 right now, which is, that's a lot of juice. You're dealing with the mafia bosses now. You're loan sharking when you're doing that. It's not as bad as hard money, but that's a lot of juice, man. So you got that. And then you got to factor in your homeowner's insurance, which in cities like Detroit or the suburbs, it can be high. It can be $100 to $225 a month, depending on what you want covered. And if you want sewage covered, you want, because let me also say, when you're buying a house and you're getting an insurance policy, it's like really important for you to sit down with that insurance agent and ask them specifically, what does it cover? Because in your policy, let's say it'll have like flood coverage, but that flood coverage only covers you from water coming through the windows into the basement. It doesn't cover you for like flood, like for if your sewer backs up, or let's say the city storm drain gets backed up and it comes up through your floor drains in your house and floods your basement, or like we had in 2014 and even a couple of years ago, we got a torrential rain and the pumping station in Detroit called Connor Creek failed, and when it failed, it backed up the entire stormwater waste center, storm wastewater, however you want to call it, and that backed up like thousands and thousands of homes got water in their basement just because the pumping station went down. So that's one thing. Talk to your insurance company, talk to your agent, really make sure that you know what coverage you have, because if you're going to buy in a mortgage, you're already paying a huge nut on the mortgage. So now you're paying the mortgage with the principal and interest. You're paying your homeowner's insurance, which can be from like $100 to $225 per month on a single family home. And then you're paying a lot of other fees that you don't really realize that you're paying. You got taxes. Taxes, when you buy a house, could be one number, but after the first year, particularly in this market, you buy a house, let's say you pay $100,000 for it, and the taxes are, $2,500. If somebody's living in the house and it's their primary home, then they have a homestead exemption, which makes the tax rate be less. Well, once you buy it, not only are you no longer homestead because it's not your primary home, so you're going to pay more money there, but also they're reassessing and reevaluating the amount of money in taxes that you need to pay based on the sale price that you bought it for. And then they're going to come back the following year in January, and you're going to get a letter that your taxes have been reevaluated and your SEV taxable value is going to go up. And now your taxes can go up. I mean, I've seen people that bought houses for cheap, and the taxes were $1,000, and then the year that they roll over, they go up to $2,500. Well, that's because the guy before you lived in the home. It was their primary house, and they bought the house in a time when the houses were extremely cheap. Detroit, 10 years ago, you could buy a house for $10,000. So if that guy bought a house for $10,000 or $15,000, and now the market's grown to where that house is worth like $70,000, $80,000, $90,000, well, when you buy it and you turn in your deed and it gets recorded, and you do your property transfer affidavit, and you waive your principal residency, in there because it's not your primary home, now your taxes go up significantly. And you got to be able to anticipate that before you sign on the dotted line, because if you look at your loan and you look at how much money in rent you're going to make, and then you start looking at how much you got to pay, and you think you're going to make $500. Well, when the taxes uncap, and then you get, a better insurance policy, and you start holding 10% back for property management, and you start holding back money for vacancy and for, maintenance and all that stuff, you might think, well, I'm going to make $500, and now it's only $150. And for some people, they'll buy a house, and if they're making $150, $200 in passive income, they're happy because they know in Detroit, particularly, you're going to get 10% appreciation or more every single year. So if they hold for 5 years, if the tenant pays rent, they're chipping down their principal little by little, but it's a 30-year mortgage, so it's not that much. And aside from that, they're keeping the house maintained. Hopefully they keep the bills down and all that stuff, but you're growing that equity over time. And it's a fact that since 2017 until 2025, the average property in Detroit has increased by 300%. That's a fact. It's been in the paper. There's multiple articles about it. They're talking about it all over the country, all over the world. And that's why there's so many eyeballs here on Detroit, because there's an immense there's an immense opportunity for you to make money both passively and through appreciation. And a lot of these guys want to come in here and flip and everything, and they're going to make their little 20,000 or 25,000. But a guy who buys that same house and holds it for 5 years is going to make all that passive income. The tenant's going to pay their note down, and they're going to cash in on the appreciation. And in 5 years, they're going to beat that flipper on income over and over again based on the time that they hold it. But one of the strategies I want to talk about is the BRRRRing. That's the real ticket in Detroit. If you can come up with $100,000, don't buy, 5 houses for 20 grand down. Buy one house for like 50, 60, 70,000 and fix it up and then refinance it and then get your 75% out and hit that number and put your money back in the bank and keep rinsing and repeating that over and over again. It's a way better strategy because now you have a house that's got a 25% equity position. When you complete the BRRRR, you have 25% in equity. You got all your money back in the bank. You've learned a lot because now you've bought a house and you've rehabbed it. You knew what you had to do. You've experienced the appraisal and you understand now that doing the appraisal, what they look for and how they grade your house, whether it's a C2, C3, C4, or whatever, like all of these things you probably don't even know what they are. And some of them you probably do, but these are things that you start learning. And it's the same thing. Experiencing that is the same thing as I tell people who are new who say, I want to buy my first house and I want property management. Well, why would you want property management on one house? How could you, if you don't manage your own house and you don't understand how it's done, then how could you really oversee a property manager who's managing your house and know whether or not you're getting screwed or whether or not they're overcharging you for things or whether or not they're doing work to your house that it really doesn't need? Sometimes when people don't own something, it's like the difference between having a credit card in your pocket and having cash, right? If you have a credit card in your pocket, statistically, you will spend more because there's not an emotional attachment when you're not holding cash. But if you have cash in your pocket and you go out and you go to spend, every time that you pull that money out of your pocket, there's something that goes on in your brain that tells you that it's not okay for you to blow through more money than you can really afford because you can visually feel and see the money that you have. So as it goes down, there's something in our brain that triggers like pain, and it tells us that we don't want to do that, so people are more frugal when they use cash versus cards. And it's the same thing when you're like the property management company is shopping for the things that you need and using your money. They don't really, they're going to be cheaper than, the commercial guy that you see the billboards for or whatever, but they're not going to be the same as you going out and finding a mom and pop type contractor guy who's going to like treat you right and give you a good deal. And they're definitely not going to keep up with, like me with my rentals. I have, somebody who does all my maintenance stuff and, we have something worked out where he gets an X amount of dollars a week. Right. And I always keep him busy and he can't make that kind of money on his own. And he still can do my stuff and do side jobs and he makes more money and he's happy to do it. Like you develop these systems like as you grow as needed and you do it because you have to, and you can do it slowly when you're doing your own thing. When you're doing your own thing and you're in control of your own car, you decide how fast, how slow, when to go, when to stop, when to turn, when to go backwards, and where you're going to go destination wise. And people need to start off and know how to do all of the jobs. So, without going on too much of a tangent, we'll get back to the BRRRRing. So if you have enough cash that you can buy a house, it's really important for you to buy one and fix it and make it nice and put the tenant in and achieve a good appraisal and get that refinance where you get your cash back, because now you got confidence. You have the confidence in yourself that, hey, I went out, I worked together with Dave and I found a good deal and he brought it to me and we made sure it was good. And then we got to decide like what we did, how did we sand the floors or do we put carpet or do we put laminate vinyl tile? Did we redo the bathroom all the way or did we glaze the tub and glaze the tile and just, do a lip sticker on there? Where do we put the smoke detectors? Where do we put the carbon monoxide detectors? How do we fix this up so that we don't get nickel and dime by the tenant? Addressing the little issues that, when you're buying a house that already has a tenant in there, it's really difficult for you to get in there and really take a hard look at it, because sometimes they got so much crap in the houses that you can't even see the basement walls. They just got stuff they're living in. It makes it tough, especially if you got a tenant that's got, themselves and their husband and their kids, and there's like 5, 6, 8 people living in the house or whatever. Like, they're going to accumulate a lot of stuff, and that stuff's going to be in the way, and it's going to make it to where you can't see everything you need to. Well, when you start off with one that you can BRRRR, you're going to get a vacant, cleaned out house, and you're going to go into that with a strategy of how you want to do this, what color paint you want on the wall, and what you want the house to look like. And do you want dark cabinets, or do you want white cabinets, or do you just paint the ones that you already have and change the countertop? Do you just change the sink? These are all things that you really need to know. And once you start getting to know that, then maybe you get confident enough to where you think that you can manage your property through property management. And now you know that they can't blow smoke up your behind or whatever and try to convince you that, you need to do a $7,000 turn, because I've seen that happen. And going back to BRRRRing, I just think it's altogether the best strategy for Detroit, because you're buying something at value, you're getting your cash back, you're learning everything along the way, you're able to identify what the next house is going to kind of be like and what it could be cost-wise, because you're developing a pattern where you know how much it is to put in a water tank or a furnace or a paint job for the whole house, or how much it costs to do tuck pointing on a chimney, or how much does it cost to redo the tuck pointing on a porch and paint the cap and fix the railing, and how much does it cost me to get through the rental inspection process. And a lot of people in Detroit, there's an inspection process, and you have to get a rental inspection, and you have to get a lead inspection, and you have to get complaints. And once you do, you're good for 3 years. But when you're getting Section 8 tenants, you still, even though you get rental certification, you can use that Section 8 inspection, and it's not good for 3 years. The rental compliance through the city is, but you need annual re-inspections through Section 8, and they can just show up whenever they want to. And also, you can put a tenant in there after you pass the inspection, and this is one reason why Section 8 can be a real pain in the ass. I've seen it happen many times where landlord picks up a house and they do a nice little rehab, and they get a Section 8 tenant, and they fill out the packet, and they get the rent approved, and then they set up the inspection, and they come out and they pass them or they fail them, and then the second time they come out and they pass them, and everything is good to go, and the tenant's super happy, and you give them the keys and sign the lease, and you collect the deposit, and then they move in, and then a month later the rent comes due, and their deposit, or not their deposit, but their tenant portion is due. And all of a sudden they don't have it. And then they call into Section 8 for an emergency, quote unquote, emergency inspection. And then the inspector comes back out, and then they point out all these things. The inspector now dings you for 10, 15, 20 things that you now have to fix. And now you have to go back through that whole thing again. And it's all because the tenant's just being a little dick and doesn't want to pay the rent because their portion is due and they're just trying to get out of it. I mean, recently I saw a Section 8 tenant who found a house, came, loved it, gave the security deposit, and it was during the cold time of the year, and the guy was having a hard time renting, so they put that Section 8 tenant in there for only $500. She moved in. As soon as she moved in, everything was passed. She gets in there. Now it takes 2 or 3 months to get your first disbursement through Section 8, but the first month came and she owed her portion, which was only a couple $100. Next thing you know, she's calling Section 8 for an emergency inspection, and then they came out and, gave a whole bunch of things. She starts taking this position where she doesn't have to pay rent because the inspection's not passed, but that's not how that goes. They still need to pay rent unless you go on abatement. Right. And this lady moved in, did all that stuff, didn't pay rent, lived there for 2 or 3 months, just making up excuses about what was wrong. They kept coming back. Every time they'd fix it, they'd pass. A couple weeks later, they'd come back, fail it again. And this guy had to keep paying money time after time again. And at the end of the day, after 3 or 4 months, this tenant never paid rent one time. And then she just moved out without notice and left him just like that. Boom, gone. Now he's got to go back in there and fix it up and change the locks and, make sure that the house is secure, and then leave it sitting there with the furnace and the water tank in there, worrying that someone's going to break in there every day. And there's scammers out there that do this type of stuff. And property management company placed that tenant, and the tenant gave documents, and she qualified, her credit and everything. but she's what they call a professional tenant. And sometimes people get stood up with that. And, those are some concerns. But, when you're going through the process of buying a house that's vacant, fixing it up and getting it nice and putting your tenant in there and, being a part of the, the rental process, that's why I brought in in-house leasing so that my clients could be more involved in the process of renting their own property versus like where it goes to property management and they just call you or email you and say, we found a tenant, we're going to put them in there. And they really don't give you any say, which I don't like. And I don't like how property management companies say, like, you can't talk to your tenant at all, only we can, because now you don't know your own tenant. So if you ever fire the property management company, you can't go back in there and say, I'm just going to call the tenant myself and bump you out as a property manager and take it over because you don't know them. You don't have their contact information. You never spoke to them, and they don't even know that you're the owner. They only know the property management company because that's in their contract, and they do that on purpose so you become a codependent of them. And they also do it so that the tenant can't play mommy daddy games with, property management company tells them they got to do something, then they call you, and then you say they don't have to, and then they say, well, daddy says I don't have to do it. Well, mommy says that you do. That kind of stuff does happen, but if you're a person that doesn't, you cut right to the chase and you cut aside the bullshit, like you can dead that issue the whole time. But they try to keep you away from your tenant. They try to keep you away from the process of placement of tenant. You really are cut out of that. And then during your like rehabs and everything, they're going out, they're trying to get you a quote and they're trying to get you the work done. But that's all dependent on the contractor at the time and how much they're telling you that it needs and because the property manager is not going to go out to your house and walk through it. They're going to send a contractor there almost every time, no matter what they say. They're going to send a contractor there, and the contractor's going to go through it, and they're going to come back with the scope of work. And that scope of work is going to be whatever it is, right? And this has happened to me so many times where, they need a rental turnover, and they come back to the client and say that it's going to be $7, $8, $9,000. And we're like, $7, $8, $9,000? What? That's crazy, man. Like, there's no way. This house was just completely remodeled. It's only been a year. There's no way. And then we send another contractor in there aside from property management, and they come back at $2,000 or $3,000 or something. Well, the property manager is not really trying to rip you off. They're just going off what they trust. They trust a guy that does turns for them all the time. And that guy's coming back and he's saying, this is what it is. And they're just delivering the message. And then they're putting their management fee on top if they do that. Some of them put 10 or 15% project management on there. Some of them build it into the rehab quote. So you never know that you're paying more. But they got to make a profit too. And that's part of being a property manager, knowing that, when you have property management, you got to understand that like they're not doing this to you as a charity service. They're doing it for a business. So it's in their best interest to rent properties because they get the first month's rent as a commission. It's in their best interest to do maintenance calls because they make money off that. It's in their best interest to do turnovers on your stuff and get it rent ready for a new tenant because they make money off that. There's not money in collecting 10% of the rent in property management. Like if that was the case, there would be no property management. They make their money off leasing, rental turnovers, maintenance, service calls, all that stuff. That's where they make their big money, and it's really not big money. And most property management companies, like if you were to see a guy who has 500 properties and he's managing them, or a big company that's doing 500, 600, 700, they're not making a lot of money. That's not like a business that you're going to get rich in. I'm telling you from personal experience, it's not. But they got to make a profit. You got to understand that. But if you're in control of your own, doing your own BRRRR, you're doing your own, buy and fix and flip, or your own buy and hold just by buying, fixing, and holding. Maybe you're not refinancing. Like that's how you're going to get educated. And when you're small, you have the time. You have the time to look at the properties. You have the time to invest a little bit of time in yourself and invest your time into being part of the process of renovating or tenant placement or marketing or whatever. Like you have the time and you need to make the time, because if you don't, you're not really learning the whole thing. And if you're not learning the whole thing, when you do get big and you do start growing and you need other people to depend on, they're going to come back and they're going to fuck you. They're going to do it. The most favorite client for someone who's trying to get over on you is the one that trusts you so much that they just stop asking questions and they just, okay, whatever you say, that's what I'll do. Well, that's what starts it. People say, oh, okay, cool. Well, this guy never complains and the tenant called. So instead of just going over and fixing this little pipe leak, we're going to go over there and do all new plumbing in the basement, and it's $1,500 instead of just going over there and making a little $200 service call or whatever. And if you don't know the difference, how the hell would you even be able to say, hey, this ain't right? Doesn't sound right. I don't like this, whatever. You're not going to know. So how do you make money? How do you make money in this business is understanding like the whole process from start to finish. Like, how do I buy? Where do I buy? For how much do I buy? What's a deal? Why is it a deal? What is the market rent? What is a reasonable amount of rent that I'm going to get from a tenant in this area based on, how many bedrooms there are or what location it's in. And then once you do all that, you got to understand what is your cost every month. Like, do you know how to figure out cap rates? Because if you don't, you need to know. If you don't know how to figure out cash on cash or whatever and why that's important and how to figure that into your strategy, like you need to stop what you're doing right now and figure out the fundamentals. How to buy right, how to keep a good budget, have the systems in place to be able to do that, whether it be through an Excel sheet or a Google shared doc or some sort of a, property management software or something where you can keep track of your expenses and you can know exactly what you're spending, when you're spending, who you're paying and all that. And when it gets down to the end, if you're doing that, then you can look at a property and say, is X price a good deal? If I buy it at that price, what is it really worth? And how much money will it take me to get there, right? And then when I do get there, what will it rent for? And when I put the tenant in there, what we all want to know, right? If we're buying and holding, how's that going to shake out? People, they don't really understand the true cost of being a landlord. And so you'll see all these like sharky bullshitting wholesaler guys who will put out houses and they'll tell you like, the price and they'll say, the rent is this and then taxes and insurance are this, cap rate 25%. Bullshit, man. Come on. It ain't 25%. There's a lot of things you take out. They'll say, oh, turnkey, buy this for, or buy it for $60,000, $10,000 rehab and ARV's $400. Bullshit. That's not how it goes. And people get duped by this all the time. There's websites like Investor Lift where these kids go on there and they daisy chain deals and they throw them out there to like real investors and stuff. And these real investors are like cutting them up within minutes. And, excuse me, they're cutting them up. They're saying, dude, you're telling me like the house is, 50 grand needs 10 grand in rehab and the ARV is going to be 300 grand. Then they go walk through the house and he's a fucking $80,000 rehab. And that kid don't even know how to articulate that. He doesn't even know how to use a power drill. I bet you the dude doesn't even have a fucking screwdriver in his house. And this guy's telling you a $10,000 rehab and you can't even buy the material to do your kitchen for 10 grand, depending on the house. Or if you're doing the house in the bathroom or something, you can't buy the material for that much. And then here we are with a house that needs, a $15,000 roof and $9,000 worth of windows and, a $3,000 chimney repair and whatever. And this kid, he don't know because the only thing he's ever done with his two hands is play fucking Xbox. So this is the guy that you're going to talk to about, your success? No, come on, be smart, right? Deal with somebody who's a professional. Do your research on people, Go online and Google someone. Someone comes to you like, I'm a successful real estate agent or I'm a successful wholesaler. I'm a successful contractor. Google them. If you can't find shit, they're lying.
Wholesaling or distributing is the sale of goods or merchandise.
Oh, my phone picked up on that and started talking. That was impressive. So anyway, you got to be smart, and you got to learn. You can't learn how to cut the bullshit out of your life until you learn like what you're doing at a high level. It's once you develop a very good skill, then other people they can't tell you don't know anything. They can only show you what you don't know. And that's if they know more than you, and when you sit down and you talk to people about real estate investment, don't sit and talk to people who don't do it. There's going to be a lot of people. There's literally these internet guru dudes. Like I keep getting calls like this week. I swear I got no less than 5 calls every day off this one particular pole smoker that's on social media that claims that you can build a Section 8 fortune for only $2,500 down. You go online and you search this guy, there's articles that call him the Prince of Poverty and all this stuff, and like extensively grotesque articles about this man's character. There's all these testimonials online by people who are saying he's a piece of shit and he ripped them off and they didn't learn anything. And this guy is flaunting his riches, online. I mean, he literally had a podcast or a webinar or something. They noted in this article I read about him that said like he's in a 1,000+ customer, Zoom type meeting or whatever. And he's like, if you want to take advantage of the poor and fuck the government, let me get a hell yeah. And there's people on there screaming hell yeah. Like, what in the fuck are we doing in life? Like, what? That makes me upset. I've said it before in my podcasts. If you come here and your mentality is you're going to make money off the backs of the less fortunate and you're going to be the king and everybody else is just like a little minion to you or they mean nothing or whatever, I'm a guy that's going to tell you to like, there's the door. Like, I don't have time. We're dealing with real business with real adults, and we're providing housing to people, families with flips. We're providing first-time homes for families that are going to live there a long time. We're buying houses to rent to people that like work hard and shit. And yeah, there's bad tenants out there, and there's people that deserve to, get the, to say negative things about them, I guess, when you're frustrated. But like for the most part, there's a lot of good people that like just need a place to live, and they need a comfortable, safe, and affordable place to live for their family so that they can flourish in their life or they can just exist or whatever it is. That's their thing. That's not our business. Our business is to provide this housing so that we can make income and build wealth over time. That's what we do, right? And our job is to not blow money on stuff we don't need and make sure that we, like Dave Ramsey would say, like live on less than what you make, and build wealth so that like at some point you have something to give back to your family. Maybe it's your kids, maybe it's your wife, maybe it's a charity, maybe it's your dog, right? Because people love their dog, or maybe they donate all to the Humane Society. Who cares? It's not my business. My business, though, is to make sure that like you don't get lied to and that you don't get manipulated and all that stuff. And I'm just so tired of these people that take other people's money to teach them stuff, and then they really don't teach you a goddamn thing. And then when you find it out, like you're not going to get a refund. Like you just got fucked, and they know that they were going to do that from day one. They know they're going to do that to you. You just didn't recognize it, and then it was too late, But that's why when I talk about how to make money, you have to be able to look at, if you're going to flip, you have to know how much am I buying for? What's my rehab cost going to be? You have to set a very strict budget. You have to make sure that you hit a certain timeline, because the more time that goes on, the more holding cost that there is. The more likely that a contractor is going to start fishing out, getting weird and chasing money all around town because he's eating up all of his money on your job by showing up late and leaving early every day. So now he's trying to, rob Peter to pay Paul so he can come back and fix your job off the deposit from Joey's down the street. You know what I mean? And you have to be able to look at these rentals. And you have to be able to like say, how much do I buy it for? What's a good deal? How much is the rent? When I do, if I do get that rent, how feasible is that? How long will it take me to do that? Or should I give a little bit less of a rent so I'm more competitive to get a tenant faster? Do I do regular cash paying tenants? Do I do Section 8 housing? Do I do, short-term or mid-term rentals to people that are on vacation? Or do I do rentals to people that are in the medical profession, that are traveling physicians or nurses or something, and you're providing furnished apartments or whatever? There's a lot of different ways that you can go, but you'll never be successful unless you can look at it and know how to do it from start to finish, and then look at the core fundamental of it at the end and say, okay, if I'm going to buy this and I fix it and I put someone in there and I refinance and I have a payment, what are my actual costs? I'm paying my mortgage payment. I'm paying taxes. I'm paying insurance. I'm holding a maintenance allowance. I'm holding, maybe 1 month per year divided by 12 for vacancy. You're holding a little bit for CapEx. Or, with BRRRR, that's another thing that's great about it. I mentioned CapEx. CapEx is projecting like maybe you're going to need a roof in 5 years. So now you're holding a small allowance every month so that in 5 years you have that banked up. So like when it's time for the roof, you can put it on, right? But when you go in and you BRRRR, you identify those larger ticket items and you address them from the front. And you go in there and you fix all the little tricky stuff that could be a problem. So like when your tenant moves in, you're not getting beat up on service calls, for little, stupid stuff like, oh, the P trap under the bathroom sink's leaking because the contractor forgot to go in there and just snug it up with his hands, or something stupid like that. And you want to make sure that you're going to do the roof and the windows and the furnace and the water tank, because you don't want to get bothered with all that shit. Because when the furnace dies, it's going to be when it's like 20 degrees outside, it's snowing, and every guy in town that does HVAC is going to be busy because, shit like that happens when it's cold. Right? It's just like, when your air conditioner goes out, it's when it's 95 degrees outside and you're miserable and you can't get no one to show up because they're always out fixing all these other air conditioners for people because their shit dies when it's hot. And that's just the way it is. So if you think that it might be a problem, like go ahead and fix it before you know it is a problem. When it's finally, like when it's broken all the way, like, okay, this thing's 20 years old. Like what's the lifespan on a water tank, right? It's 15 years. So you got a water tank that's 20 years old, like take it out now and put a new one in. It's going to die. It's just a matter of time. So why leave it in there until it finally dies after a tenant moves in there and then you're getting a call on a Sunday morning at 6 a.m. because they want to come out there and put a new water tank in right now. You know what I'm saying? So this is how you make money. You get with people. If you don't know, you get with people that know, and you suck up their knowledge. And that's why my company is so valuable at Detroit Buy, Hold, Invest. We provide you with the opportunity to get deals sent to you where you don't have to go searching for them. We find them, we send them to you. We go out and we evaluate them and do video walkthroughs and point out everything that you need to know. And then we pair you up with contractors and home inspectors so you can get a real idea of what is wrong, complete picture. And then you can get somebody to give you a quote for how to repair it. And you can take action to solve any problem that might be a problem in the future. You can solve it before it becomes one. And then you can know how much the house is going to be worth and what it's going to rent for. And then you can really calculate your numbers. And when you calculate your numbers, then you can decide, is it really profitable? Or am I doing this for a small amount of passive income because I know I bought in an area that's going to scale in value by 50 grand over a 2-year period of time. Excuse me. It happens, 300% increase in equity since 2017 in Detroit, right? So there's a lot of play there. There's a lot of play. You can buy houses, fix them real quick and rent them or flip them, or you can, buy a house. Sometimes you can buy a house from someone that's in distress, that's full of junk, clean it out, change the locks and sell it and make 15, 20 grand. I've done it. The best deal I've ever done like that is a lady came to me. She was going through all kinds of stuff. She was behind. They were about to foreclose on her and take her house. She wanted to bolt and go to Florida. She offered me, what she would sell it for. And I had to buy it within like 6 days or else it was all over for this lady. She was going to lose her house. I bought it from her. I gave her exactly what she wanted. I literally cleaned it out, changed the locks, put it on the market. I made $40,000 on that house and never did a damn thing. Right. So these things will happen. And as you get smarter and you start knowing the market, knowing what a deal is and what's not a deal, not only can you jump on great opportunities without hesitation, but you can avoid the ones that you know aren't good. Because people who are trying to sell you things are going to try to sell you what they have. And if they know they're going to make a profit off it, they're going to try to sell it to you and they're going to make their profit. And whatever happens to you after that, they don't give two shits what happens about that. And that pisses me off and I don't like it, but it's the sad truth. That's the way it is. And we are, as investors, investment-minded people who are aggressive and we're willing to take action. We're going to go out and we're going to do what we got to do so that we can make money so that we can do what we decide that we want to with that money. And whether that's give it all the way to charity or take care of your family or take a vacation or, go get a big old tattoo or, buy, ridiculous amounts of booze and get wasted all the time. Like whatever it is, that's your business. It's not mine. But we're not doing this, to learn and not make any money. And we're not doing this to, make money but not grow wealth and just go out and blow it in the strip club every weekend. Like that's stupid stuff. And you'll never make it far if you don't have the value for what you're doing. And like you're building wealth, and how you build wealth is you make money and you squirrel it away and you build it into a large pile of money, and then eventually you figure out something to do with that large pile of money that continues to grow it. And at some point when you decide that you want to retire, or you want to, work part-time now and spend more time doing some things that you love, or maybe you decide you're going to go become a professional, fisherman, or you decide that you're going to go try your luck at the PGA Tour or whatever it is. If you put yourself in a good position, you actually have that option. If you don't, then you're Johnny Clock Puncher for the rest of your life, and it's never going to change, and you're going to wake up every day and you're going to hate it, and you're not going to, see the outlook of, the outlook in life is not going to be so good, and your future's not going to seem so bright, and you're going to be miserable. So that's what it comes down to: how to make money. Be smart, do your research, be involved, roll up your sleeves, get your hands dirty, and get to it. That's what we're doing this for. Anyway, I appreciate you listening. It's another episode, Detroit Buy, Hold, Invest podcast. I'm your host, David BRRRR. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me everywhere you want to find me. You can call me on my cell phone, 313-451-0448. Detroit Buy, Hold, Invest, Clyde Realty. We out!